The courtroom was dead silent. A boy, no older than 12, stood in front of a towering judge. His small hands gripped a stack of papers. His voice trembled, but his eyes didn't. "I'm my mom's lawyer," he said. Gasps rippled through the room. What happened next would be talked about for years. The courtroom was heavy with silence, the kind that makes every breath sound loud. A boy, no taller than the judge's bench, stood in front of the court. His shirt was neatly tucked into pants that were a little too big, his hands clutching a stack of papers so tightly that his knuckles turned white. His voice shook for only the first word, but his eyes, they burned with certainty. "I'm my mom's lawyer," he said. Gasps scattered through the room like ripples in water. Some people chuckled in disbelief, others whispered. The judge raised his eyebrows but didn't interrupt. That small voice had just challenged the entire system, and no one saw what was about to happen next. Malik Turner was only 12 years old. He had grown up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the city. His mother, Danielle, was his world, the only parent he'd ever known. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by day and waiting tables at night. Malik never heard her complain, but he could see the tiredness in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. She was a woman who had taught him about justice, about right and wrong. Every night, as she tucked him in, she'd tell him that life wouldn't always be fair, but you had to fight for what was right, no matter who stood in your way. Malik didn't think much of those words until the morning everything changed at IT. Was cold that November day when pounding on the door jolted Malik awake. Before he could even rub the sleep from his eyes, police officers were in their tiny apartment. The sound of metal cuffs locking around his mother's wrists hit him harder than anything he'd ever felt. "Danielle Turner, you're under arrest for fraud," one of them announced. Malik's heart slammed in his chest. Fraud? His mom? He watched as they let her out, her voice breaking as she shouted back, "I didn't do it. I swear I didn't do it." The neighbors peeked from behind curtains, whispering like they had been waiting for a scandal. That night, Malik sat alone in the dim light of the kitchen. The silence felt heavier than the entire city. The public defender assigned to his mother barely looked at her file. He spoke to her in rushed sentences, his eyes glued to his phone. Malik didn't know much about the law, but he knew this. That man wasn't going to fight for his mom. So Malik decided he would. He pulled out an old laptop his mother had bought from a thrift store and began searching. How to defend someone in court. What is fraud? How to prove someone innocent. The words didn't make sense at first, but Malik didn't stop. Every evening after school, he'd sit for hours, reading case files, learning legal terms, and watching trial videos. He took notes until his fingers ached. The night before the hearing, he printed out bank statements, news articles, and even highlighted laws that could prove his mother's innocence. He didn't sleep. When morning came, he put on his best clothes, a white shirt and black pants that were slightly too long. He walked into the courthouse alone. People stared, some smiling at the sight of a small boy, others confused. When the judge asked if Danielle had legal representation, Malik stood up. "I'm my mom's lawyer," he said again, this time louder. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The prosecutor smirked like this was all a joke. But the judge, instead of dismissing him immediately, leaned forward. "You understand you cannot officially represent her?" "Yes," Malik said, his voice steady. "But I can speak, and I can show you the truth." The judge allowed it. Perhaps it was curiosity, or maybe something in Malik's eyes convinced him that this was worth hearing. Malik began. He spoke of how his mother's bank account had been hacked. He showed how the transactions in question happened while she was working, proven by her time cards. He pointed to ATM footage where a man, not his mother, was using her stolen card. He presented the bank's fraud report, highlighting inconsistencies in the prosecution's evidence. The room grew quieter with each word. The smirk faded from the prosecutor's face. The judge watched intently, his gavel untouched. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through the tension. A tall woman in a sharp suit stood up. "Your Honor," she said, "my name is Gloria Reeves. I'm an attorney in this city, and I would like to represent Danielle Turner, pro bono." Gloria explained that she had been observing and that Malik's evidence was compelling. The judge allowed her to join the case immediately. From that point forward, it wasn't just a boy against the system. It was a boy who had inspired a professional to fight alongside him. 2 weeks later, the truth came out. The real culprit was caught, a man with a history of identity theft. The charges against Danielle were dropped. She walked out of the courthouse a free woman, tears streaming down her face on the courthouse steps. She hugged her son tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. "No, Mom," Malik said, smiling. "We saved you." News outlets picked up the story of the little boy who had tried to be his mother's lawyer. Donations poured in for Malik's education. Years later, he returned to that same courthouse, this time as attorney Malik Turner, a real lawyer, ready to fight for people who had no one else. Because sometimes, the smallest voices carry the greatest truth. And sometimes, the boy with a stack of papers can change the course of justice forever.